One of my greatest pet peeves is how every generation is perpetually claiming that younger generations are undisciplined and worse than their own, as the younger generations then mimic this same ignorant example and perpetuate the perpetual circles of these ignorant social trends. And the point I want to make is, this is one small reflection of mankind's worship of ageism, one's seekings of superiority, or triumph, as I call it, through one's age, that is so unconscious that the majority of us haven't the slightest idea that we in fact embody it ourselves on a daily basis. This game of triumph that teaches us to perpetually weigh our social worth against others as we conform to unanimity to all of mankind's vices. Bullying, shit-talking, facilitating ignorant gossip and banter, trolling, nitpicking, nagging, all as a means of proving said social worth to our peers, as we furthermore deflect and deny anything and everything that could take away from us our given rank of triumph that we've worked so fervently and or despicably to earn. And in this instance, we so readily take our guaranteed levels of rank over our physically younger peers by claiming ourselves superior to them in any of a multitude of ways via age, then waving that rank out into the world as if from a flag post so everyone can see, particularly those we are subliminally claiming to be superior to. Because it is the one card that is presently guaranteed as to why someone will always be wiser, smarter, always having the best or most right ideas, claiming they are above, cooler, more worthy of leadership, or generally more socially clean than their peers. I bring this point up because I'm always hearing people talking about how bad and undisciplined other people are, particularly younger generations. And all I want to say to these people is, do you remember how you truly were as a rebellious child, breaking free from adolescence, fighting against a system which has been trying to constrain and control you at every turn? Clearly not. Because the point B to Y on this roadmap of A to Z are entirely missing, hidden from view by a repertoire of years of complacently conforming to unanimity out of selfish seekings of self-preservation to a deeply tainted status quo. Ergo, how much time do you actually spend trying to understand just how flawed, selfish, self-centered, self-indulgent, prejudicial, intolerant, egomaniacal, hypocritical, duplicitous, and superficial you are in your own ways in order to transcend these vices? The answer to that question is, again, clearly not enough. And it could be incredibly enlightening for such individuals to start turning inwards. You see, what's most aggravating to me is, as far as the people I hear saying things like this are concerned, these people themselves haven't the slightest clue how bad, if not worse, they themselves are in a multitude of aspects of their lives, often carefully hidden from the public's view via masterful facades, when compared to those generations they are discriminating against. Not to mention that such people are the ones teaching that this utter negativity, this undiagnosed hypocrisy, prejudice, and intolerance via seekings of triumph through claiming superiority is acceptable and even normal human behavior. Breeding all of the above without even knowing it, i.e. ego, selfishness, bullying, prejudice, intolerance, hypocrisy, etc. All of which often being carefully presented as playful banter by adept deceivers to disguise true tainted intent, whilst at least unconsciously claiming themselves to be more superior to, prejudicing against the man or woman on their left or right, based on, in this instance, their age. Ignorantly believing that age is the only derivative of wisdom and intelligence because the rules of the game of triumph tells them so, and they don't know how to think outside of the rules of the game of triumph. You see, the truth I've come to is we are all guilty of these things to varying extremes. in this instance embodying ageism as a means of claiming social superiority over others. No matter how perfect, non-judgmental, and tolerant one may pretend to be, or even perhaps think that they are, we are all enlisted in the game of triumph, whether we admit it or know it or not. This worship of ageism being just another of the nearly infinite ways in which we are clandestinely bred to seek triumph over our peers, perpetually deflecting blame away from ourselves and our own actions as being a part of the problem, whilst we continue to breed the same negative, intolerant, judgmental, hypocritical, prejudicial, and so forth environments that have bred us, thus perpetuating the perpetual circles of darkness. The way I see it, the first step to correcting all of our problems is first removing the veil from our eyes and willing ourselves to see the world for what it actually is, not as what we wish it to be. The next step is humbling ourselves and separating from this popularity contest we live, and thus this game of triumph based entirely in selfish competition, elitism, and meritocracy, which creates the fallout of manifesting debilitating systems of hierarchy and caste, thus the separation of wealth and power that creates crime, that produces a lack of care and or ability to pursue one's passions, and that manifests slums that then harbor more crime and less ability to care and to pursue one's passions, and thus perpetuating the perpetual circles in which the majority of us are then forced to battle and brawl for our placement within these hierarchies, whilst of course taking what guaranteed ranks of triumph whenever we can, i.e. our age. It's time to make a change. And to do that, I've got a couple of suggestions. For starters, how about instead of us being a bunch of hypocrites, as each and every one of us very often are, we accept our flaws and pitfalls. We seek to see and acknowledge them rather than deflect and deny them, and then embrace that we ourselves are a part of the problem that is presently plaguing our society in ways we presently can't see and are most often choosing not to see. Because society teaches us to deflect and deny that the negative social trends we and our peers embody aren't in reality negative at all. Ergo, the veil over our eyes being maintained by the worst among us hiding in plain sight through controlling the pace and the rules of this self-serving game we unwittingly live. Next, how about we embrace that the people we call our friends are very often unsung bullies and narcissists, or are so easily influenced by the bullies and the narcissists elusively controlling nearly all our social environments, that they don't see how much of a bully and a narcissist they in fact have become. These clandestine bullies and narcissists we call friends, perpetually prejudicing against and judging others as a means of building their thrones of social dominance, coincided deflecting the spotlight from being pointed at themselves, and thus preventing the illumination of any of a plethora of vices and wrongdoings they've meticulously hidden from view. This prejudice and judgment that is so normal in our social hierarchies that we don't even acknowledge it as prejudicial and judgmental ignorance. Instead, we naively and complacently accept it into our lives as simply being a part of our status quo. Again, perpetuating the perpetual circles. Are you starting to get it? Then, how about we take this a step further and embrace that each and every one of us have ignorantly and prejudicially bullied and judged others, sometimes in completely believed to be harmless ways, often as a means of fitting in with a particular crowd, to the full extent that sometimes we ourselves don't even realize we are in fact being ignorant and prejudicial bullies. Why don't we accept the truth that even us good guys, us light bearers who know our intentions are pure, even when perhaps we've been led astray, have fallen and been unjust to our peers to varying extremes in ways we often deflect, deny, and justify, often as a means of being deemed as cool in mankind's popularity contest, and thus to fit in with a particular crowd in order to earn rank of triumph and social dominance within that crowd. Finally, how about we acknowledge that we ourselves aren't perfect, despite us perpetually doing what society teaches us to do best, claiming ourselves to be just that, as well as claiming ourselves to always be the most right with our thoughts, beliefs, and opinions, whilst coincided labeling others as idiots, retards, morons, losers, and weirdos, dubbing them as socially unclean, as we at least unconsciously view ourselves as superior to them, as we savagely brawl with each other for rank through this very unsung ignorance within the game of triumph. All because we ourselves and our ideas have been shunned, degraded, and judged in this same ignorant way all our lives, and or we've watched others be shunned, degraded, and judged in this same way. Judgments, shunning, and degradation that, out of selfish seekings of self-preservation, we all try to avoid at all costs, including by conforming to entirely negative social trends, sugar-coated under some twisted distortion of positive light, living within a status quo owned by darkness. The fact of the matter is, slums are going to keep growing so long as we maintain steady, corrupt, and greed-induced course. So, yes, in a way, each generation is exponentially getting worse as our neglected, impoverished, and oppressed numbers are steadily increasing. But as far as generations are concerned, the darkness that has been firmly in control for millennia has been just that. Firmly in control for millennia. And despite there being different social and economic factors for every generation, I'd be willing to bet my bottom dollar that as a whole, and generally speaking, each generation has acted quite the same, dating back thousands of years. We ourselves as individuals deflecting and denying our vices, pitfalls, and shortcomings, ignorantly and often unconsciously embodying prejudice and judgment in ways society doesn't presently acknowledge as prejudice and judgment, degrading others as a means of keeping the spotlight off ourselves and to fit in with a particular crowd, whilst claiming it as someone else's fault as to why the world presently sucks. And as we come to recognize the traits that obtain success, wealth, and happiness, i.e. duplicity, superficiality, selfishness, egocentrism, etc., in this twisted reality we live, we so easily come to embody them ourselves. So, in this sense, the worst example of human behavior is in fact getting worse and worse in our connected yet vastly disconnected world, as the darkness tries to cement its roots in this pivotal point in human history where, if something doesn't change, it won't ever change. Ergo, the darkness wins. And most of us know somewhere deep within that that isn't how this cookie crumbles. The irony, what frustrates me the most about these tainted, though popular and cool people controlling our status quo, those ignorantly and unwittingly embodying said ageism most, is that it is these people who are most actively playing the game of triumph, the ones perpetually and often elusively degrading others through shit-talking, negative banter and gossip, and trolling, nitpicking, and nagging others as a means of inflating their social superiority. The ones calling these younger generations the worst generation ever, who are in fact the ones most embodying all that makes every new generation suck. Teaching this negative behavior, the rules of the game of triumph as set before us, of the status quo, to all those who don't want to be at the bottom of the deceptively empty barrel that is our society. Thus, technically, the worst generation ever is the generation that comes before the younger generation. The one teaching the younger generation all they know, and to perpetually displace blame for their own mistakes, vices, and shortcomings away from themselves onto others. Monkey see needs to stop monkey doing. The only way the world changes is when we ourselves change and defeat all that we embody as individuals that harbor the world to the darkness, i.e. superficiality, duplicity, selfishness, ego, etc. But until we make this change, rising above our adversities and the pains that haunt our past, while seeking to acknowledge all we embody that has been so deeply adulterated by a status quo owned by darkness, we will continue to fall as a society.